Hi, my name is Eric Deggins, and I'm author of the new book called Race Baiter: How Media Wields Dangerous Words to Divide a Nation. Apologies for the odd lighting. I'm recording this in my home. I'm supposed to tell you a little bit about the book, tell you a little bit about what inspired me to write it. The book itself is a handy dandy guide to all the different ways in which media use prejudice, stereotypes, even outright racism to try and make profits, to build audiences, and to inoculate those audiences from going to other places. So, Fox News, for example, I use as a pretty poignant example of a news outlet that uses often prejudice and stereotypes against people of color, particularly black people, to speak to the fears and the concerns of its audience, which is mostly white, which is mostly older, and of course politically more conservative and a little bit more male than female. So, how did I get inspired to write this book? Well, one way I was inspired to write this book was I spent over a dozen years covering media in Florida, and I saw all the different ways in which media used prejudice and stereotypes to divide people. And I spent a lot of time as a media critic decoding that stuff and trying to show people the different ways they were being manipulated and the different ways people were being misrepresented or underrepresented. I had a particular experience, though. Bill O'Reilly, the Fox News anchor, called me a race baiter on his TV show, The O'Reilly Factor, and I'm still to this day not quite sure why he called me that. In his commentary, he never really named a reason other than the fact that I serve as chairman of the Media Monitoring Committee for the National Association of Black Journalists. But all we do is we try to advise people on how to deal with diversity better in their newsrooms, in their coverage. We offer tips. We try to highlight places where we feel people of color are not being covered well, where prejudice and stereotypes are being transmitted along with news coverage. So I'm not quite sure why that makes me a race baiter, but I even got a chance to meet Bill O'Reilly. He declined to comment for the book. Fox News declined to comment for the book, but he did hold a press conference in my area, in the Florida area, and I went down with the blessing of the people who organized the press conference and his speech to ask him why he called me a race baiter, and he didn't really have a great answer, but that does form the introduction in the book. And it's a great story of how I essentially tracked him down in Sarasota, Florida, about 40 miles from where I live in St. Petersburg, and asked him straight up, why do you think white people can't talk to black people about race? Which is what he said in his commentary. And another reason why I wrote the book is because it's also a handy way it's a media literacy book, is really what it is. And I think there's a lot of people who are using it in classrooms. Cal State University, Indiana University, University of South Florida, some of these schools I know are using it. It's a media literacy book. It teaches you how television works. It teaches you how radio works. There's a history of talk radio in one of the chapters that shows how conservative talk sort of became as big as it is in the radio industry now, and why, in fact, its future is being threatened because it's become too strident and not entertaining enough. There's a history of reality television. I talk about the stereotypes in reality television, and along the way, I give a history of how the form evolved. There's a history of race in politics. We talk a little bit about advertising. We talk a little bit about Willie Horton and how that happened. We talk a little bit about how some politicians, ranging from Richard Nixon to Ronald Reagan to George W. Bush, have used sort of fears of people of color in order to inspire people to vote for them. So there's a lot of media literacy sort of wrapped up in this story about prejudice and stereotypes and how society works. So I guess some of the high points of the book for me, again, I love the introduction where I track down Bill O'Reilly and sort of ask him to explain himself. I have a section in here where I talk about network television and scripted television, and I talk about the black best friend character. Anybody who's paid attention to diversity on television knows that there are always these characters who are sort of best friends of the lead characters, best friends of the heroes or heroines, and their main job is to support the lead. They don't really have a life of their own. They don't really have relatives. They don't really have any sort of storylines. That they, every so often maybe they get an episode, but for the most part they're there as a device to support the usually white lead characters. So I call them the black best friends, and they're in here. Um, there's a great chapter at the end, after I spend a lot of time sort of deconstructing all these different ways in which prejudice and stereotypes are used to make money. I try to talk about how we can overcome that. And the key, of course, is to make the audience more literate about these devices that are being used, about these manipulations that are going on. And so there's a whole chapter at the end that talks about how we can come together through media, come together through technology, how the internet can be a way in which we find each other. People of like minds can find each other across the entire country, the entire world. We often like to talk about how media allows people to get into their own little silos and only hear the views that they believe. But I also believe that it's a tool, so you can also use our current media structure as a way to put yourself in touch with views that you would never be in touch with before. The key is to understand what's going on and to adopt a different perspective, which is what the book is trying to do. And I'm also proud of the fact that I got an interview with Andrew Breitbart, who's a well-known conservative blogger, firebrand, somebody who, frankly, I disagreed with politically in just about every way you can imagine. But he did talk to me for an hour, and he talked to me about some of the issues in the book, and he talked to me about 5 weeks before he died of a heart attack last year. So I was able to get an extensive interview with him in the book where he talks about some of the issues that he has championed as a conservative blogger and that we've disagreed about as media figures. So um, the key takeaway for the book, I guess, is that this structure is all around us, and that more often than we realize, different media outlets are using these odd ways, these odd, unfair ways to appeal to different audiences. And there are certain platforms that I think are more pernicious than others. They're more damaging than others. I don't necessarily think this is something that happens equally across the political spectrum, for example. I mean, I know MSNBC is liberal and they do try to appeal to viewers of color, but I don't think they demonize white people in the way that, say, Fox News Channel or the Daily Caller or the Drudge Report, conservative media outlets, the way they demonize people of color and the way they use the criminality of black people, for example, to try and arouse the fears of their audience and also prove their political points. I don't believe those two are equivalent. Although there is some of the same stuff going on in terms of appealing to a specific audience with a specific political message. And then finally, where can you find the book? Well, the book is pretty easy to find. It's on Amazon, so if you do Race Bader and my last name Deggans, that'll come up. You can go to my website, which is just my name, ericdeggans.com, EricDeggans.com. It should be in Barnes and Nobles across the country. I've seen it in Indiana. I've seen it in California. I've seen it in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So they seem to have done a decent job of getting the books into stores across the country. So you might be able to find it at your Barnes and Noble. Of course, you can order it online, even from the publisher, Macmillan. Palgrave Macmillan is the publisher, and you can also order it online from Barnes and Noble. So there's a lot of different ways to get a hold of the book if you're interested in it. And if you go to my website, ericdeggans.com, I also do personal appearances. I'm happy to come to your institution or come to your civic group and give a speech. Go to my website and send me a line, and we'll talk about how to make that happen. I sort of failed to introduce myself at the beginning of this. Sorry, but I am a TV and media critic for the Tampa Bay Times right now. But in October, I will start a new job as the first TV critic that National Public Radio has ever had. So I'm going to be doing what I do for the Tampa Bay newspaper audiences, except I'm going to be doing it for a national audience and for a radio audience. So I have a big career change coming up. be available. I'll still be giving talks related to the book. I'll still be out there trying to press the message. And I certainly hope you found this interesting, and I hope this makes you interested in either hearing one of my talks or picking up the book wherever fine publications of its sort are sold. Thanks a lot.